Really interesting article here, published at the Gray Zone written by Gareth Porter and Max Blumenthal. Title, as you can see here, U.S. State Department accusation of China genocide relied on data abuse and baseless claim by far-right ideologue. That is the one and only Adrian Zenz, definitely far-right Christian radical. He's anti-Semitic. He's anti-feminist. Just a really shitty character, and this is basically the go-to source that people have been citing for the claims of the genocide supposedly being perpetrated against Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, China. So I'm not going to go over the whole article. It's pretty lengthy, but I'll definitely link it down below. Both President Joe Biden and his Secretary of State Anthony Blinken have endorsed former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's last-minute accusation of genocide against the Muslim Uyghur population in China's Xinjiang province. But an investigation of published work by the researcher Pompeo relied on to level his genocide allegation reveals a pattern of data abuse and fraudulent assertions that substantially undermines the incendiary charge. The U.S. government's accusation of genocide against China stems from a single source, one source from this nutjob. A June 2020 paper by Adrian Zenz, a right-wing German researcher affiliated with for fuck's sake, they're associated with the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, which has attributed all of the deaths due to COVID-19 around the globe to communism. This is the organization that this piece of shit's affiliated with. Articles by the Associated Press, CNN, BBC also relied on Zen's article to claim that plunging Uyghur birth rates and the application of birth control measures in Uyghur counties of Xinjiang region were proof of a policy of demographic genocide. Just days after the publication of Zen's paper, Pompeo issued a statement denouncing China's alleged policy of forced sterilization, forced abortion, and coercive family planning, personally crediting Adrian Zen's shocking revelations. And again, if Mike Pompeo is citing you as some, as a credible source, I think we should all take a step back and really look at that source, because again, Mike Pompeo is a horrible, horrible human being on many levels. Let's see. Biden backed the genocide charge last August when it first appeared in a flurry of media reports. His campaign spokesman told Politico, the unspeakable oppression that the Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities have suffered at the hands of China's authoritarian government is genocide, and Joe Biden stands against it in the strongest terms. Blinken, for his part, declared at the first press conference as Secretary of State they agreed genocide had been committed against Uyghurs. Again, and they're all relying on this one report by Adrian Zenz, this far-right Christian fundamentalist. He's anti-Semitic, anti-feminist, like I said. While Zen's employers describe him as one of the world's leading scholars in the People's Republic of China, it's definitely not true. Government policy towards the country's western region of Tibet and Xinjiang. He is, in fact, a far-right Christian fundamentalist who has said he is led by God against China's government, deplores homosexuality and gender equality, and has taught exclusively in evangelical theological institutions. Lyle Goldstein, a China specialist and research professor in the Strategic and Operational Research Department of the Naval War College, told the Gray Zone that Zen's labeling of the Chinese approach to the Uyghurs as demographic genocide is ridiculous to the point of being insulting to those who lost relatives in the Holocaust. Goldstein said that the Chinese approach to Xinjiang is a more repressive posture than we would like, but it sure isn't genocide. Moreover, a careful review of Zen's research shows that his assertion of genocide is contradicted by flagrant data abuse, fraudulent claims, cherry-picking of source material, and propagandistic misrepresentations. Dr. Adrian Zenz. Genocide or Equal Treatment in Family Planning Policy. In Adrian Zenz's 2020 paper for the Jamestown Foundation, he boasted that his findings, quote, provide the strongest evidence yet that Beijing's policies in Xinjiang meet one of the genocide criteria cited in the UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Zenz was referring Article 2D on that convention, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. It's not what's happening. Again, what has changed now is China had previously had the one-child policy, but that did not apply to ethnic minorities. Now it applies to the Uyghur Muslims in the region. But preventing births by itself cannot be evidence of alleged genocide without evidence of intent to destroy the group in question. Otherwise, any birth control program provided to an ethnic minority would be prima facie evidence of policy of genocide against the group. Zenz argued that population control measures applied to Uyghurs could be branded as genocidal because population growth rates fell by 84% in the two largest Uyghur prefectures between 2015 and 18, and declined further in several minority regions in 2019. But more complete statistics that Zenz cited in his report and data he conveniently omitted contradicted his conclusion. Zenz provided statistics revealing that between 2005 and 15, Uyghur population growth in Xinjiang, I apologize if I'm butchering that, was 2.6 times higher than that of Han Chinese in the Xinjiang region. The chart displayed in his report is below. Han and Uyghur annualized effective population growth in per mile percent. So the Han in orange, Uyghur in blue. So actually, the population of the Uyghurs has been going up, and it looks like the Han population has been going down. Both official Chinese figures and Zenz agree that the Uyghur population in Xinjiang increased significantly between 2010 and 2018, which we can kind of see from that there. And there's another representation of it. Change of Uyghur population and Han population. Uyghur is the blue, Han is the red. We see the Uyghur going up, Han going down, leveling out. Zenz figures show an increase in Uyghur population from 10.1 million to 11.8 during the 2010 and 2018, while Chinese government figures demonstrate an even larger increase from 10.1 to 12.27 million. That means the Uyghur population in Xinjiang increased by a staggering 25%. So again, it just poking holes in this claim of genocide by forced sterilizations or whatever else Zenz was claiming. Let's see. According to China specialist Martin King White, the one-child policy was accompanied by a long-term pattern of abuses in its implementation, including intrusive menstrual monitoring, coerced sterilizations and abortions, staggering monetary fines for over-quota births, smashing of furniture and housing of those who resist, and withholding registration for babies born outside the plan. Uyghur families, however, were exempted from the one-child policy. Urban Uyghur couples were allowed to have 2 children, and rural Uyghur couples 3. In practice, moreover, rural Uyghurs often had large families, with as many as 9 or 10 children in some cases, as even Zenz acknowledged. 2015, the Chinese government announced a relaxation of the decades-long one-child limit on urban Han couples, allowing urban couples to have 2 children and rural families to have 3. In Xinjiang, where birth rates routinely exceeded previously established limits, local officials urged equal application of family planning policies between Han, and Uyghur couples. 2017, Xinjiang's regional government ended the extension of the one on the old child limits for Uyghurs. Uyghur couples were thus expected to follow the same limitations recently imposed on Han couples: 2 children in urban areas and 3 in rural regions. The Chinese government has freely acknowledged a 5% decrease in the birth rate in Xinjiang between 2017 and 18 was a result of the equal enforcement of family planning policies across ethnic lines. While leading this point, Zenz also overlooked the fact that China's overall birth rate has fallen precipitously in recent years across demographic spectrum as the population ages and contraceptives become more widely available through programs like the government's annual free distribution of 1 billion condoms. For example, in the city of Guangzhou, which is far from Xinjiang, the rate of newborn babies plunged to its lowest point in a decade. Cherry picking and distorting source material, framing free healthcare as genocide. Also in 2017, China's National Health and Family Planning Commission announced a 5.2 billion healthcare investment in Xinjiang, stating its intention to strengthen a brittle health infrastructure in impoverished rural areas of the region. According to Chinese government statistics, maternal infant mortality rates in Xinjiang were nearly halved by 2018, while average life expectancy rose as a result of the increased public investments. 2019 study by Lancet described China's improvements of maternal health and infant mortality reduction as a remarkable success story. Another study that year by the Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences arrived at a similar conclusion. How these positive health indicators could serve as proof of genocide was left unexplained by Zenz, who simply omitted the numbers from his report. Of course he did. Throughout his paper, Zenz framed the expansion of public health care services in Xinjiang as evidence of a genocide in the making. For example, Zenz pointed to a photograph of Uyghur residents of rural regions of Xinjiang receiving medical consultation at a free health clinic as part of an effort to enforce the thorough implementation of increasing intrusive birth control efforts. I think these folks are probably past the age where they would be able to have children, wouldn't you think? Elderly couple. But that's what Zenz is citing. I mean, Jesus Christ. According to the original source of the photograph, an article in China News, it depicted a regiment from the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps deploying to a rural province as part of the government's poverty eradication program. So it had nothing to do with forced sterilizations or family plannings or forced abortions or anything like that. It was a poverty eradication program. But Zenz was arguing that it was an effort to, introduce increasingly intrusive birth control efforts. I mean, Jesus Christ. You can tell he just has this ideology, this narrative he wants to push no matter what. Facts be damned. I mean, there were doctors measured blood pressure, electrocardiogram, blood sugar, height, and weight for poor villagers who came to see the doctor for free. More than 200 people were diagnosed and treated. More than 100 common drugs were distributed on the spot. Another point in this paper is then cited an August 2019 document from Xinjiang's Wenquan County government office as evidence of greater pressure to implement intrusive birth control methods. He referred to a single mention of 468 birth control surgeries, which alternatively be translated as family planning operations, but provided no evidence that the operations were coercive. Revealingly, Zenz omitted the next line, which expressed satisfaction with the birth rate of 8.11%. Zenz proceeded to ignore the rest of the document, which touted the increased provision of free mental health services, polio vaccinations, AIDS prevention treatment, as well as poverty alleviation measures, and the construction of new hospitals and medical clinics for the population of Xinjiang. How did a massive investment to improve the health of previously neglected rural communities fit within the framework of policy of genocide? Once again, Zenz avoided the issue entirely. Again, just cherry picking and completely misrepresenting data to fit this narrative that Zenz is trying to push across, that there's a genocide being perpetrated against Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang region of China. Among Zenz's major findings was a claim that 80% of all net added IUD placements in China were performed in Xinjiang, despite the fact that the region only makes up 1.8% of the nation's population. By 2019, Xinjiang planned to subject at least 80% of women of childbearing age in the rural southern four minority prefectures to intrusive birth control surgeries, IUDs, sterilizations. I mean, Jesus Christ. That's quite the claim, but let's see what was actually true. According to 2019 China Health Statistics Yearbook published by the National Health Commission, the original source of Zen's claim, the number of new IUD insertion procedures in Xinjiang in 2018 accounted for only 8.7% of China's total population. So Zen's major finding appeared to be off by a factor of 10, a staggering error that substantially undermined the explosive quality of his argument. The relevant sections of the statistical yearbook Zenz relied on was translated by a native Chinese speaker and are displayed below. A full translation of the chart can be viewed here, and an archive of the entire statistical yearbook is here. There we go. While Zenz attempted to defend himself against accusation of cooking statistics on birth control surgeries in Xinjiang, he ultimately cast further doubt on the quality of his research. Responding to a Chinese academic critic, he claimed that he had calculated Xinjiang's 239,457 new net IUD insertions, device added minus those removed, as 80% of the national total in 2018. However, Henan province registered 206,281 net IUD insertions, or 69% in 2018. Hebei, meanwhile, registered 61, amounting to a total of 210% national net insertions. These numbers only make sense when calculated alongside provinces like Jiangsu, Yunnan, that had more removals, minus 60 and minus 54%. Than total national net insertions. By relying on such bizarre metrics, Zenz appeared to have attempted a cynical statistical sleight of hand to point Xinjiang as a hotbed of birth control surgery. And perhaps the most unintentionally absurd assertion in an article filled with them, Zenz asserted the Chinese government inserted between 800 and 1,400 IUDs per capita each year in Xinjiang, which meant that each woman in the province who had to undergone anywhere between 4 to 8 IUD surgeries every day. Like, if that just not rings out complete and utter bullshit, I don't know what would. He's saying that there were so many forced IUDs happening, each woman in Xinjiang would have had to got 4 to 8 IUD surgeries every day. I mean, if that's just doesn't speak of ridiculousness, I don't know what would. With so much time spent in the operating table every day, it's a wonder that anyone in Xinjiang could find time to eat, time to work or eat. This is from Monkey King on Twitter. Wait, what? Zenz claims 800 plus IUDs placed per capita per year, which must be about 1,600 IUDs per female per year, and even more per females at birth age per year. I mean, yes, completely ridiculous. Yeah, okay, so I'm not going to read anymore because I've already read enough, but I think this article by Max Blumenthal and Gareth Porter does a really, well, hold on, I'm going to just scroll down to getting into Zenz's background a little bit because it's pretty revealing, and I think it explains a lot of why he's coming out with just this completely fabricated and made up narrative. A look at his background helps explain his ideological motivations and provide important context on his negative focus on the application of birth control. He's anti-abortion, anti-feminist Christian fundamentalist captivated by end times theology, and has said that God has led him on a mission against the Chinese government. No wonder why he is making up so much shit against, China. BBC, based on AP, CNN, led by God to defeat the Communist Party of China. He described himself in 2015 as a lecturer in empirical research methods at a Christian university. Zen's first published book, Worthy to Escape, Why All Believers Will Not Be Raptured Before the Tribulation. Excuse me. He and his co-author, Marlo Sias, urged Christian believers to subject unruly children to scriptural spanking, condemned homosexuality as one of the four empires of the beast, and argues that Jews who refuse to convert to evangelical Christianity during end times would either be wiped out or refined in a fiery furnace. I mean, for fuck's sake. Huge fucking anti-Semite. There we go. Fucking A, man. And this, again, this is the supposed supreme source on all things China and Xinjiang and things concerning the genocide of the Uyghurs, but it's all fucking bullshit. It's all made up by this Zenz fucking right-wing fundamentalist fanatic. Zenz predicted the coming fall of capitalism would bring to power the Antichrist within a few decades. He identified the force that will usher the Antichrist into power as the economic and financial fall of Babylon, with Babylon symbolically representing the world's global economic system, capitalism. So, again, he's associated with the Victims of Communism Foundation, anti-Semitic, got hell-bent on talking shit and trying to paint this narrative that all these things are happening against the Uyghur Muslims that aren't actually happening. And again, not to say there aren't things happening there that are, you know, detrimental and should be called out, but there's definitely no evidence of the supposed genocide that Zenz is obviously claiming is happening, you know, to these Uyghur Muslims. Anti-abortion, opposed to gender equality. Another important God-given authority structure that Satan is attacking through the postmodern spirit is that of gender authority structures. And so, through notions of gender equality, the enemy is undermining God's unique but different role assignment. I mean, look at that shit. Zenz currently serves as a fellow at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, Washington, D.C., based right-wing lobbying front born out of the National Captive Nations Committee. The later group was founded by Ukrainian nationalist Lev Dobryansky to stifle efforts at diplomacy with the Soviet Union. Its co-chairman, Yaroslav Stetsko, was a leader of the ONB militia that fought alongside Nazi Germany during its occupation of Ukraine in World War II. In April 2020, Zen's employer listed all global, this is what I was talking about earlier, all global deaths from COVID-19 as victims of communism, blaming each of them on the Chinese government. I mean, for God's sakes, China has obviously handled the pandemic so much better than the capitalist hellhole that is the United States, for God's sakes. I mean, for God's sakes. You know, mainstream Western outlets like the AP, BBC, and CNN have accepted Zen's dubious research as absolute fact while ignoring his background as a religious extremist who is ideologically committed to regime change in Beijing. If Biden and Blinken formally adopt the Trump administration's genocide designation, they will have effectively endorsed Zen's shoddy and propaganda research as well. The genocide accusation may appeal to the Biden admin as a useful geopolitical cudgel, as well as a defense against right-wing Republican attacks, painting the new president as soft on China. But it will only strengthen the hand of hardliners determined to provoke a dangerous and potentially catastrophic confrontation with fellow nuclear-armed power. Damn. Pretty nuts, right? But this is the supposed expert that all of these corporate media outlets are relying on for this claim of genocide being perpetrated against Uyghur Muslims. And we can see it's shoddy statistics, completely made up, misrepresenting actual statistics to try to fit his narrative. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. Like the video if you liked the damn video. Subscribe for more content. Peace. Much love.